then I'll be also sharing my screen. Like I said, you please feel free to visit the Miro board on your own device if you can. And I need to do one more thing. Sorry. Okay.
Matthias, can you share the link to the Miro board again, please?
I'll be sharing that. Yep. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay. So what you should be seeing hopefully right now is the Miro board here in my browser window. And so we started working on this about 2 weeks actually ago, exactly 2 weeks ago. And this is the second event storming session. What we're trying to do is really map conflict. What are the various events within a conflict, prior to a conflict, during a conflict, after a conflict, right? And the reason we're doing this is we want to understand conflict overall a little bit better, but then also build on our understanding of it. So we are here, various domain experts, right? So one benefit for you being here is that you can also look at, okay, how do people in other domains think about conflict? For example, if you're primarily a mediator and you have the privilege and just doing mediation, you don't really look at in detail what leads up to it, either that be on an administrative side, or maybe there's a cultural component, social components, even though most of the mediators I know are aware of that, at least to some extent, but then also potentially from a business perspective, what comes after, like what is the process? Because at Lox, we build products and services that help ADR professionals make more money more easily. And for that, we need to understand really all the intricacies of what has actually happened, not leading up to a conflict. And then, of course, we know how to mediate fairly well and have those great outcomes, but then also what happens after that, what key learnings can we derive from that can feed certain systems better. So this is like a broad theme, really, why we're doing this. The other thing is also just to provide better training. So not only products and services, but also better trainings, and potentially also we could offer adjacent models to mediation to just get a little bit better of understanding how everything works. So for that, what we've done is create, like I said, domain events as sticky notes on this Miro board. Right, there's a little frame here on the left and green. I just realized this might not be the nicest color coding. Might be a little bit hard to see for some. But just a really brief introduction to event storming, what it is. There's a couple of ways how to do that. This is a big picture event storming, right? And so what we've been doing, and what I'd like to propose to continue doing today, is to create more of these orange stickies, potentially shift them around, remove some redundancies. And these domain events, as you can see in this example, is written in the past tense, right? So if you already know all that, feel free to ignore my voice for a few minutes here and just get started, look around. And what we can see here is from the left to the right, we have some sort of timeline, or timelines rather, right? And they might not be in perfect order yet, and that's absolutely fine. The goal in the previous session was really just to put the stickies on there and think about the various domain events, what happened. So here we can see one that sticks out to me, the school bullying, right? So which is potentially a cause of a conflict, right? But okay, I would say today at this point in time, and it would probably be best if the person who actually wrote that could rewrite that. But this domain event has to be in past tense, right? So English is not my first language, but I would say something like a student got bullied at school, right? This is, for example, something that happened, or person was bullied at school. So we're going to talk a little bit about actors also a little bit later on. Same with issues with management. This is like broad, right? And there's opportunities to rewrite them. Let's see. Moving a little bit further to the right. Ground rules agreed on. So we can see here, this is, for example, clearly doing a mediation already at the beginning of a mediation, right? So if there's ground rules, right? So we have mediator gave opening statement, that's past tense, right? Mediator invited the parties to ask questions they might have about the process, ground rules agreed on, right? So those are all within the rules of this event storming session. And you can see roughly there's a progression from left to right, from the past into the future on a scale. So that's what we're going to be working on. So I invite you today to take a look around, add to it. If you see redundancies, like the exact wording, for example, you can either group them together if they are actually falling into the same timeline. Sometimes we also have alternative timelines, right? We have, for example, a happy path, but we also have a path, for example, or various paths where things are not quite as happy and they don't go as we would like them to go, right? So there might be a breakdown of communication, the mediation got canceled, for example, right? All of that can be mapped here as well. So this is the general exercise at this point in time, and depending how we are doing, I'll keep an eye a little bit on the activity of the board. We might actually follow on the next step, but I think there's still a lot that can be put on there. And it obviously also takes time to take everything in. So that's the exercise. If there are any questions now, please ask them. Also, if you want to just chat, ask questions, see clarification, talk about some things that you might see that are very interesting, please feel free to do so. I want this to be a very interactive session, but again, also if you would like to work in silence, absolutely, you can do that as well. I appreciate you all being here. One thing that I also should mention is that for the domain events, all the stickies have to be orange. There are some still on the left lower half of the board. And I'm thinking of actually introducing some other stickies momentarily. But if you are still working on domain events, please use the orange stickies, as we'll get a little bit more color on the board in a moment. All right, I want to introduce something new, a couple of more stickies, couple of notes here. So on the left hand, I started, I just see the spacing is messed up. Apologies for that. I'll fix that. But there's a little bit of a, what do you call it, terminology. So we have our domain events that we know, and now we also have a command and an actor, right? So Wikipedia, if you look at that, the Wikipedia article might have some weird, more business-focused terminology. So I rewrote this a little bit. For example, a command results in the creation of a domain event, right? Written in the imperative. I believe that's a correct grammar term, imperative, right? So we had a miro board created. So the command for that would be create miro board, right? And then in this case, actually it wouldn't be a party, for example, right? The party would be, for example, Matthias, the actor in this case, because I created it, right? So just as an example. But in the context here of what we're actually doing, we have parties, right? We have mediators, we have a bunch of different actors. An actor, I think at some point, can also be an external system, but we'll get there. So, and the reason why I do that, or why I introduce this at this point in time, is if we go some of the left here, right? We already identified, or we might have thought to ourselves that, I could rewrite this ticket probably better if there's more context, like if there's an actor in there, right? So we can just give you an example here on the right hand side, right? So we have this party shared feedback on process, right? So I can because the domain event here is really feedback on process shared, right? But then we lose a little bit of context. Well, who actually did that, right? Just like in the example earlier with the school bullying, who's actually doing the bullying, who is that, right? So there's two things, and one might seem a little bit superfluous, but I'll do it anyway. So the command would be share feedback, right? That's the command that essentially, feedback will get shared. So this had this nice blue color here. I think that's blue, right? And here we can actually already start linking the stickies, right? Because the share feedback goes directly to feedback on process shared, and that's the connection. Additionally, well, who shares the feedback, right? In this case, well, the party shares feedback, right, on the process. There's also the option, of course, that a mediator would share feedback on the process itself. If you think about the process as being the technology platform, that is certainly something that we can do as well, right? So I would just connect the party to share feedback. And then we have a little bit of a line here. So that's an easy example. If you want to start doing that, feel free to do that. But that's not a focus today. But for some of the tickets, some of the stickies, it might make sense to do so already. So that's what I wanted to share. And welcome, Anisha. And thought I saw Tina for a moment too. I'll share the link to this Miro board here in a second as well. All right, I'm just going to do a quick screen share again. So something that I saw, which was very interesting, it's actually also a way how I personally would do a lot of things. So Asbahi has identified a bunch of issues here and under the umbrella of miscommunication, which is absolutely accurate, right? So for example, parties did not give each other effective constructive feedback. There was lack of clarity, transparency, and guidance in the workplace policies. The person felt like they were not being heard, etc. Right? So this can all fall under the umbrella of miscommunication. So in this graphing model, right, absolutely you can you have a directed graph and you have kind of like a top level term like miscommunication, and you go into more granular details. However, and this is not wrong, this is a good way to mapping things. However, as this event storming will become more complex with in addition to commands and actors, there are other stickies that will add to it. So, and there's really not one way of doing things, but how I would see it, just like similarly, this is essentially clustering things around. What we could also do is, well, maybe we do not have to directly label it miscommunication because, again, this is a domain event, right? So past tense. And those are at least the three here. Yep, they're all past tense, so they match, right? So issues with management, mistreatment, right? That again is more higher level. That would have to be rewritten somehow. But what we could do, for example, if I might be so bold and just remove stuff, and don't worry, we can take it back. But the term miscommunication here, remove this. And what we could do is, and this is just an idea, have these three together, right? So the proximity already gives us an indication of what is going on. But what we can also do is, let's see, we have frames, maybe have some other shape. Maybe a frame is actually the best, I'm not sure. But what we can do is just have a frame around it. I don't know, give it some color, maybe, right? And group it. Maybe they have a cloud or something like that. And then the frame label, I'll zoom in here, right? We can call that miscommunication, for example, right? So that way we still have the integrity of the event storming model, right? But we can see, okay, this all falls under the umbrella of miscommunication, and that is one way of doing things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool.
I just have one question here. I think some of the actions are quite straightforward, and I'm afraid of being too repetitive. For example, mediation is scheduled, so actor mediator action is scheduled, mediation, and then what's done in mediation is scheduled. So how to deal with this?
That's actually a good point, right? Because there are just a couple of ways to um, do that, right? So, by the way, regarding what is correct, quick side note, Monisha, on the left, there's one gray frame. So the bluish one, right, is a command. So in this, so you can take a look at that. So that's not really what can we do about it, but more of this is actually a directed action. So a command is kind of like an action. So Victor, yeah, to your schedule, mediation schedule, right? Because there's a couple of systems, right? So with mediators AI, for example, right, there's a model where mediators tell us when they're available, parties tell us when they are available, and the assumption there is like, okay, let's, as long as the mediator doesn't perceive a conflict of interest based on the information they have, right, the mediator themselves actually doesn't schedule, right? That is the platform that schedules the mediation. So to your point of being repetitive, I do agree it might be overwhelming to some extent, but the benefit is, well, you really have clarity. So it might not be always as straightforward as we think it is. Like, and as I said, there are multiple models, right? In one of the pain points that mediators experience in the more analog world is, scheduling headaches, right? Where they in fact have to schedule all the sessions themselves. It's like, oh yeah, my earliest availability is in like 6 months, for whatever reason. And often it's just in finding the actual availability. So I would say give it a try and see if there's things later on that we can remove some stickies later and maybe group them better.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Cool.
Matthias, I was looking again at the stickies, and I think a lot of it is miscommunication. So I was thinking that instead, why not focus on specific areas, like so workplace conflict, and do that, and then other things are more personal or at home or school based, and that could be more specific, because I stick to miscommunication, that area. I think that's where there's a lot of conflict. So I don't know. What do you think?
That's an interesting thought to well, miscommunication is a cause for a lot of conflict. So you're right in that. It's probably not the only, well, it's certainly not the only cause, but I think splitting it up into areas like you mentioned, workplace conflict, at home conflict, school, um, I think we can try that. Um, there's probably also going to be some duplicates then, though, right? Um, but
Yes.
actually,
I think
I
that's,
think it's good. Yeah, I think it's good because you still have different actors potentially, right?
yeah, yeah. So I think there's going to be duplicates within different domains, like workplace and home would probably have some similarities. But then I think we could break it down, like you said, with parties in different domains.
Yeah, great idea. Let's do that. I would invite you all. There is maybe also Asbai. So Monisha, she looked at just under the personal home conflict box, which I believe this area will also fall into, right? So we had this domain event, which was not really a domain event just yet, but someone was involved in a domestic violence situation. I guess it's some form of domain event, certainly. Right, and the party is involved in that, right? So, and the command here is not a command, right? What we can see, but it has some good information. So what I would like to maybe see, and maybe there is not even a command here, but let's maybe try to get that into the personal/home conflict frame as well. Let's try to fit it the format. The mandated reporter part actually is something, I'm not sure if you have that. That's a good observation, right?
Yeah, I was just a little confused just because, I was like, wait, no, like as soon as I saw it, I was like, red flag, like you don't do the mediation because, you have to report that as soon as you find out because we're mandated reporters. So I was like, oh yeah, like, and I just like went into it and I was like, what if I'm missing anything? Like, what should the clients know? And so like I was very confused how that event happened, like like I don't know what would be like what comes before that, like is there a cause, like oh someone's upset, like what kind of command happens before that ends up there, like maybe is it like doing intake and then you find out, oh well I've been involved in a domestic violence conflict, and it's like, oh okay, well like that's the only situation I can see happening where that that would be like the event happening, or as a command, like you like for the media, like oh we're just I don't know, or maybe parties got upset, but then that's just another event happening, so that's why I was very confused.
Right, and I think yes. So the format, we're all new to this. So I think a command also does not fit like a lot of these, like you said, domain events, right? Because a lot of this is also very involuntarily, I would say, and command is something that has some intent often. So this might not be too fitting. But there's some other great points in here, right? If you think, for example, of a domestic violence situation, something that a social worker may experience, right? They're also mandated reporter, but they're also working on cases, right? And while so there's a form of conflict in there as well, and maybe Aspai wants to take that over. But I think there's also a situation where certainly there's no command, but there are, as you mentioned, a series of domain events, and they based on who you are. And at that point, you might say, oh, sorry, I have to report this. Or, well, I already know this. This is why I'm here. Let me try and help you figure this out. So context really, really matters. Absolutely.
I was thinking that that was just something that would come up during mediation. So they were seeking to work out maybe some miscommunication or disagreement. And then that is shared during mediation. So I think that's where I was seeing that sticky come from. Because I think if it's before taking or finalizing the mediator taking the case, that was something that they would have to address if it's specifically stated that there's domestic violence. But I think it would come out more in the mediation if they're talking about what's going on between them, and maybe that's something that will be shared.
You're absolutely right. That does happen, and that's why we have those protocols, like, to clarify, like, are you saying this, and it's same thing with child abuse and elder abuse. We hear anything like that, as mediators, that you're just mandated to report that. And then that's when the mediation either is postponed or it's terminated. And then we file the report to the appropriate agencies that investigate that kind of situation that's happening, because now it's a crime. So and then just letting them know that the confidentiality waiver may be waived because some, like, a crime has been committed, or there's there's like a evidence of something happening like that, or you've heard it and somebody said it, and it's like, okay, well, now you have to report it. So, like, you're absolutely right. That's why they have that protocol to do. But I'm glad you put it there. And so it's so fresh off the top of my brain from Professor Bowery's class that I'm like, oh yeah, this is what you do. So I was like, wait, that's why I asked. But thank you for putting it there, because it does come up. It really does.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that very valuable input. And yeah, so we're almost at time. So I'd like to wind down, as I also have another meeting to attend to in 2 minutes. Thank you so much for your participation. I think this is still a very good work in progress, and feel free to work on this on your spare time. If you would like to, also you can use the comment function, right? If you want to have a discussion on certain things asynchronously, that can be done easily using this tool as well. And then probably sometime next week, I'll reach out and see when we want to schedule the next session, whether that's going to be still in this year or in the next year. But yeah, thank you so much for attending, for participating, and I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
You
Bye-bye.
too, guys.
And yourselves.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.